Good evening, good evening, good evening to all those in the building and all those who are joining us online. Let me welcome you into both the physical sanctuary and the cyber sanctuary of the Faith Church. We are honored and glad that you have connected with us tonight. Doing something a little different tonight as we have been sharing. This is the first of many town halls, and this particular town hall deals with a subject matter that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is preparing for our golden years, or preparing ourselves as we age, and then the resources that are available for caregivers. Those of us who know what it's like to care for parents, relatives, or folks that we're connected with as we age. I am privileged to have Pastor Johnny Jones with us tonight from the Fountain of Life Church, who also works with Elder Options. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself in just a moment, but I'm glad that all of you are here. A couple of housekeeping rules online and in person. If there is a question that you would like to ask during tonight's session, just type it into the chat. We'll be monitoring online so that we will be able to see your questions in real time. So keep that in mind as you share tonight and as we take part in this town hall experience together. All right, let's meet Pastor Jones. Let's welcome him with a rousing round Faith Church applause. Pastor Jones.
My apologies. Thank you so much, Pastor Thorpe. I appreciate the invite first and foremost. I want to greet the ones of you all who are in the building, as well as the ones who are joining us live and in the replay, because we expect this town hall will get some traction, and we'll be seeing it several times. So once again, my name is Johnny Jones. I am Pastor Johnny Jones for 22 years, Fountain of Life Church, as Pastor Thorpe mentioned. But I'm also a bivocational pastor, multi-vocational pastor. I not just pastor Fountain of Life, but I have been working at Elder Options, which is your local area agency on aging. For the past 5 years, I have been the coordinator of caregiver training and support there. That essentially means that what I am doing is serving people who are caring for people at various phases of conditions. Most likely and usually dementia is what we're referring to, because it is a different type of caregiving, and we'll discuss that a little bit more later. I love this opportunity. I love to have the opportunity to engage with the community, and I want to really applaud Pastor Thorpe and you for taking the lead here on something like this with the town hall, because it is vitally important, and our demographic is overrepresented, and we utilize the resources less than anyone. So I'm here tonight as your resident expert, and I can talk about Elder Options. I can talk about dementia. My official title, other than being a caregiver support coordinator, is I'm a psychoeducator, and that pulls on all of my various backgrounds. But what I'm able to do is train people through evidence-based practices for behavior change. And in this case, we're not talking about people with dementia. We're talking about people like me and you who care for people with dementia.
Thank you so much, Pastor. So let's dive right in. And we've had the opportunity to share back and forth in preparation for being here tonight. Let me also share with those in the building that if you have a question, along with our online audience, about 20 minutes into tonight's presentation, we're going to open for any questions that you may have, if they haven't already been answered from up here. We are going to ask that you would come to the microphone. We have it strategically placed there so that everyone can see you and everyone will be able to hear you. If you have warrants and you're running from the police, we still want to hear you. We'll do something with the visual part. You got your mask. We'll work it out in Jesus' name. All right, so I want to dive into one of the main subject areas that we talked about previously, and that is that for those of us who are not yet senior citizens, those who, as all of us should be, are planning to be senior citizens, what are the main things that we need to be looking out for that we can prepare for now to better position ourselves so that we are as healthy as possible as we age and as happy as possible as we age?
So absolutely, we have two choices, right? We can get older, and then there's that other option. So I think we all want to get older, but we want to do so in a way that is healthy and age as gracefully as possible. So we really need to deal with the main causes of some of the conditions that we deal with. And that primarily is our diet, it's our lack of exercise, and some of the other behaviors that we have carried over. So we still love all of the things that, I think back to my grandfather taking lunch, and my grandmother making this huge lunch, fried chicken in the morning, and put it in a lunch box and send it with him. But the thing is, my grandfather worked probably 18 hours a day. And here we are trying to eat the same thing that grandparents ate, working 7.5 hours a day, and 4 of those were at home. So we absolutely have to deal with that. African Americans have the highest prevalence of dementia, and closely behind us are Hispanics. And that is because we also have the highest prevalence of vascular disease, cardiovascular disease. And so when we're dealing with things like heart attacks and strokes, anything that deprives the brain of oxygen also leaves you in the situation where you could possibly develop some other type of dementia. So let me clear this up very quickly, too. Dementia is a broad umbrella term that covers memory loss, loss of judgment, inability to recognize items. And all of that falls kind of in this category. We usually say Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's is only one disease of the over 100 that cause dementia. And so we have to think about Parkinson's. We have to think about stroke. We have to think about alcoholism, alcohol abuse. And then we have to look at something as simple in the current day as people who are dealing with the effects or after effects of COVID-19. We're now even seeing long COVID dementia being diagnosed. So prevention, I think, is the first thing we want to talk about. Because in order to, now modern medicine has enabled us to live longer, but we need to do so with good quality of life. So that would definitely involve making some real changes. Search, Google, when you get an opportunity, the Mediterranean diet. It's a whole lot different than what we might consider a typical soul food diet. It's oils, fruits, grains, vegetables, and fish. And that, if you eat anything closer to the Mediterranean diet, people who use that diet, follow that diet, tend to live a whole lot longer and have much less of an incidence of cognitive decline. You want to be well because we're finding that caregivers, my mother was caregiver for my grandmother when she was 80. My mom is 80. My grandmother passed away at 103. So the truth here is, thankfully, my mother still, has all of her cognitive faculties at 85 now. But it's very important that we stay strong and healthy so that we can be caregivers for people that we did not expect to be. So things that we really need to keep in mind. I know I'm kind of bouncing all over, but what we are here to do, elder options, first and foremost, I should have done that. Can I take a minute? I'm sorry. Let me explain elder options to you. So elder options is a 16-county organization. We cover everything from the Florida-Georgia line up at Hamilton County, all the way down to Lake and Sumter, Citrus County, over to the west at where Cedar Key is in Levy County, Gulf of Mexico, all the way over to Putnam County. So that's our 16-county footprint. Our headquarters, to your benefit, and hopefully to the benefit of the ones who are watching, is right here in Gainesville. And we are the Area Agency on Aging. There are 11 area agencies on aging in Florida, and there is one that covers every county in the United States. It is private, we're nonprofit, but we function under the umbrella of the Department of Elder Affairs. We are a resource that you need to know about. Anytime you get a question from any senior, any elder, any aging person, any disabled person, you need to reach out and call Elder Options. So I'm going to give you this phone number right now, 1-800-96-ELDER. I think that's 9635337. I have to double check myself. Yes, 1-800-963-5337. That's the elder helpline. That's where you open the door, initiate the call to say, I don't remember anything that Joan said during the town hall, but I know that we need help. And call and open the door for that. We are a resource. We have numerous programs. We have programs to help you age better, called our Healthy Aging Program. So Tai Chi, arthritis, Tai Chi, which helps with arthritis, it helps with balance. We do classes that teach diabetes self-management. So right now, if you're living with diabetes, everybody could use a little bit of help with how to lower the drugs, kick the prescriptions, and just live a healthier, better life. We also have programs, again, through our caregiver training and support program that support you as you give care, but we provide that both in a one-on-one as well as group settings. So you can access any of that. One of the other programs that we have is our SHINE program. SHINE stands for Serving Health Insurance Needs of Elders. It is a health insurance connection so that you can get unbiased, free information, counseling to help you choose the right Medicare insurance and all of the things that surround that. So you absolutely want to discuss your insurance situation as you reach the Medicare eligibility age. You want to have that discussion so that you get the best coverage, not to knock any of the other insurance companies, but the information that you will receive from SHINE is non-biased. And it is not a sales pitch. It's simply to help you. We have quite a few other services and programs. There's a program for veterans called our Veterans Directed Home and Community-Based Care Program. So veterans are able to, with a referral from their physician, actually have someone in their home to assist with care. So to keep you from having to go into a nursing home or some type of skilled nursing or long-term care facility, we've provided services for you. We also have some other services that help you, again, manage health conditions, manage your financial situation through the insurance process that we talked about earlier, and just a host of other things that we can help with. So that's all that we do in a huge nutshell, but I hope that you're able to advocate and say, listen, if there's somebody out there who's in need, call Elder Options and they can help you. And you can always feel free to call me. I brought cards tonight, and I hope that we can answer many of the questions that you have tonight, but if not, I'll be happy to do that by email or phone later.
Thank you so much, Pastor. And you did mention a whole lot. We're thankful for every bit of it. We're glad that it's all recorded. At what age would you recommend that we begin to avail ourselves specifically of the services that you all offer? I share it from this perspective. You know, a lot of us have gym memberships, or we walk, you know, whatever it is that we do. We meal prep, we meal plan. And we think about, you know, being or staying as healthy as we can be on an ongoing basis. But let me speak from personal experience. As the youngest of 5 children, my dad passed away in 2019. He was 89 when he passed. My beloved mom right now is 94 years young, and I get to spend about 4 days with her each week as one of her primary and direct caregivers. And from personal experience, there is so much that we did not know, and so much that we still don't know that we're finding out in our desire to care for her, and certainly the desire that we had to care for our dad. Quite frankly, there were a lot of things, Pastor Jones, that I wish we knew.
Right.
As we moved into the phase of providing what I can call now end-of-life care for my dad. There were things that we were not aware were going to happen, that we were not prepared for. There were medications that we found out after the fact that we could have put him on to help keep him in a better frame of existence that would have made things a little easier for him and easier for us. It was kind of like we were building a plane while flying the plane. And one of the things I want to do with this setting, this town hall, is to see to it that you all don't have to repeat what my family went through in a number of areas. So if you can kind of touch on, I think we need to be a little better at being proactive as it relates to aging, because whether you checked it or not, you're older now than you were when you walked in tonight. And should your heart continue to beat and your lungs continue to contract and expand, you know, we get older moment by moment, second by second. So kind of give us an idea of how we can be proactive.
So you just hit it. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. That is exactly the situation. And first of all, thank you for being a caregiver. That's a wonderful work. It's nothing any of us plan for, although almost everybody ends up doing it. You know, all of us will play that role. We will either be the caregiver, we will need the caregiver, we're going to support the caregiver. There's some role that we're going to interface with that. So thank you for being actively involved. And I know you're saying right now, but it's my mother. There are a whole lot of people who opt not to care for their mother. There are a lot of family dynamics that can play into that, and we deal with a term that we don't really like to use right now, and it's kind of falling out of fashion, but senior orphans, people who just don't have anybody. They may not have biological children, or they may have children who may not want to be involved in their lives. But caregiving is the job that you get hired for that you didn't ask for. You get dropped into it, and it just happens. Sometimes it happens quicker than you expect. And it's always more complicated than we expect. But the greatest tool that you can avail yourselves of is knowledge and resources. And take time to call and find out what is out there for you. I'm so amazed at, you know, the huge footprint that Elder Options has in this community, at how few people know. And I don't know, I can just poll the people in the room really quickly. How many people in the room are aware of Elder Options? Okay, I think you got a little advantage in that you also have, you know, a fellow parishioner here who is probably advocating and making you aware of it. But so many people don't know who we are. And then the other people who do know who we are confuse us with elder care or any of the other elders that are out there. So the Older Americans Act, which in the early 60s was created to do just that, to take care of older Americans, created these streams of funding, federal funding, that provides services and resources to us. We happen to administer those funds locally. So in order for you to know what's available, you got to call. So I always tell people, call the helpline, start that conversation. Tell them everything. Do not, you know, if they say, are we eating daily? Well, let's be honest about it. Yes, but it's a struggle. And there's really nobody to prepare the meals. And the home really isn't being picked up because they live there alone. And they need a ramp. And list all the real issues. So first of all, start with resources. Elder Options, because we are private, nonprofit, federally and state funded, we don't have skin in the game in that we are able to refer you to many, many, many other resources, such as Pastor Thorpe alluded to, some of the services that need to come from hospice and various other places. We have no problem being able to refer and connect you and make you aware of those services and resources. The age, you mentioned what age. The youngest caregiver that I've worked with in my program is 22. We're seeing high school students have to care for grandparents. So grandparents are raising grandchildren, and then the grandchild ends up being the caregiver, sometimes earlier than they want. We don't refer to early onset dementia unless it's at 65 or earlier. But we're seeing, you know, first of all, people are living longer, and they're caring for younger children. So those younger children are then left with the responsibility of having to give meds and learn how to care for those seniors and deal with the activities of daily living. So all of those are things that we need to be mindful of. So what's the right age? Although the services are for the disabled and aging population, anyone who feels like they have a need, not just for you, not just for your family member, not just for a fellow church member, but for any community member or anyone that you see, call Elder Options, dial that number that I gave you, access those services, and get involved.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Thank you, Sister Brenda. Thank you. One of the things I was thinking about as you were speaking, because there's a question in the back of my mind that I'm going to pose that deals with changes that we need to prepare for in our homes as we age.
Yes.
Things like the width of your doorway, where you can put certain grab handles. And one of the things that the Lord has been downloading in my spirit since we've been talking is that while this discussion does deal with aging and the elderly, life has a way of shifting rather quickly, and it's not necessarily tied to age. I want you to think about a couple of things, and then we'll deal with some of the in-home pieces specifically. But think about a couple of things. Think about how much your life, and God forbid that this would ever happen, but it happens every day. And sometimes it's long-term, sometimes it's temporary. But think about what would happen if all of a sudden, all the things that you normally do for yourself, someone would have to do for you. Putting your clothes on. God forbid if you got in a position where you couldn't make it to the bathroom the way that you normally do. Not only the notion of getting over the privacy and the pride factor of having someone to help. And I think this is another important point on why we ought to take as good of care of ourselves as we can, so that not only we can live as long as possible, but so that our quality of life can remain as high as possible for as long as possible. I don't want you to raise your hands. I don't want you to raise your hands. I don't want you to raise your hand. But how many of you know online, and you can type it in the chat, Pastor, that's me. But how many of you know what it is to have back problems? Back problems. Lower back, upper back. I mean, the whole nine, back problems. Well, think about how much your life changes when all of a sudden you're dealing with your own issues, but now you've got to help lift, transport, and maneuver not only a whole other grown person, but a grown person who didn't follow all of these instructions on some of the table options we may need to back away from. There's so many things that, my family has learned personally over the years, things like how to move someone safely, the importance of having, I believe what you all refer to in the healthcare field as a transfer sheet, something as simple as a sheet that lays under them so that instead of you trying to pull and tug on the person, you're literally sliding a sheet that makes things a whole lot easier. What I'm getting at is there's a whole lot we just don't know.
Absolutely.
And the concern that I have is that life happens so quickly. And if we're trying to learn all these things while we are doing these things, we're going to wish that we had known them a whole lot sooner. So if we can talk some about the physical things that some of us may need to be aware of. A lot of us may be in the phase of remodeling a home or deciding where we're going to live. What kinds of things do we need to kind of prepare for? You've already picked out which wall the TV is going to hang on.
Right.
But what about these grab handles you may need down the road? That tub is pretty with them claw feet on it, but what happens when you need a step-in tub or a step-in shower to make things easy?
You listen, activities, you hit a couple of things. Aging in place is what we refer to that as, right? In other words, I want to be able to stay in my home, or if I have to bring nursing care or a caregiver into my home, I want to be able to do that in here. People in the nursing profession, you know about all of the things that are necessary to help us carry out the activities of daily living, which is exactly what Pastor Thorpe is mentioning. So going to the bathroom, eating, transferring from chair to the toilet, or from the chair to the shower. All of those things are being able to be ambulatory, which we take for granted, but all of those things are important. Now, one thing that I noticed immediately in going into a lot of homes, the homes of people who are aging, is that a lot of times they're just overcrowded. Too much. There's just too much stuff. Flooring is a huge problem. Nice thick carpet, and then on top of the thick carpet, a throw rug that matches the nice thick carpet. Trip hazard, just a lot, right? Coffee tables, you know what I mean? So some things we just need to minimize. And then there are other things that would involve contractors and planning and design and build. My wife and I have not built our dream home yet. She's always dreamt of a second story. I've always dreamt of how hard it's going to be to get up the stairs, right? So I'm thinking, unless we can do this with a little personal elevator, this is not going to be good for us to age in. And so those are things that we have to think about. Again, the widths of doors. One of the most requested revisions to a home that we get, you can imagine, is a ramp, right? Because the first major setback that you get, and you're no longer ambulatory, you're now in a chair, and even if with just a small lip as high as the platform here, it can be a major hazard to getting you to the 4 or 5 doctor's appointments that you might have per week. So who's there? Who's going to be strong enough to lift you and your chair down that? Or if you have a mobility chair or scooter, can you drive down that? No, you are still going to need I have an older brother, and my older brother, unfortunately, was in the line of fire. Gun violence is horrible, of a shotgun, and sustained a wound that caused him to lose the use of his right leg. And so he can walk, but it's very difficult. And he's just an early senior, but yet he's a senior. And so all of those are things you have to think about. Not only will there be things that we just age into, but accidents, because some of us live pretty adventurously, right? And many other things that could happen. So we do need to make plans for that. Things that you can do in your home right away, though, is minimize, declutter, lower things, just searching for assistive devices. That's another good Google search for you. Assistive devices, ASSISTIVE, assistive devices. Search that. You're going to find all types of things that will be beneficial to you as a caregiver and also as a care recipient. Very, very valuable for you. Right now, we're redoing my mother's bathroom and bedroom. No carpet. The bathtub is being replaced with a walk-in. All of those are things, again, to make it easier for her on a daily basis, okay? But think about things like your counter heights, and as you're building and revising and you're doing that big kitchen remodel that you've been planning for, think about what it's going to be like. Is there an area for you to roll up to instead of your normal standing height? All things, again, to think about. So our planning needs to be for us. It needs to be for us. You also touched on quality of life and how we care for ourselves. So when you access these resources, you'll find that there are some things, you've been tugging and lifting, all this time by yourself, but there is a device that'll make it even easier. But you won't know that if you don't search or ask. So I'm a person who believes in just throwing out my wish list. And my wish list is, listen, is there a device that picks people up out of the bed and swings them around and put them in the chair? Yes, there is, right? And those are the types of things we have to do. We have to put out our wish list. But again, start with getting some advocates. When you dial the Elder Helpline, it is not going to be magic wand. What it's going to do is it's going to relieve you. The first thing that we do to relieve a caregiver's stress, Pastor Thorpe.
Listen carefully.
Please listen. The number one thing that caregivers report as a reduction of stress is that they were able to tell someone they needed help. First thing, they immediately find relief. Somebody else knows. So we have to tell others what we're going through and what we need and what we're facing. Don't expect magic wands to be waved. Don't expect diseases to be cured and conditions to be reversed, but do expect that somebody will say, I can help you manage that. I can refer you to someone who can make that better. I can connect you to an agency, an individual. I know someone. We get our caregivers in the room, just like this room, just like us. And everybody thought that their person who has dementia is the only one in the world who doesn't want to take a shower or a bath. And we find that everybody's going, yeah, that's the same. But then we go deeper and we find out that there is a fear, and that because of neurological changes, the water touching their skin changes and they don't perceive it in the same way. So there's a lot of things that you are dealing with in silence and in isolation, that when you connect with a group, when you connect with support, when you connect with help, you say, hey, this is going to be easy. We can make it through this. And caregivers then feel a whole lot better. So help, doing exactly what you're doing tonight, relieving somebody who's going, I'm the only one, there's nobody else out there. And then they find out a 22-year-old is doing what they're doing. It doesn't mean that we feel better because somebody else is doing worse, but it does make us put everything into perspective. And we're people of faith. So as people of faith, we recognize that we have to, what the strong has to bear the infirmities of the weak, things that we have to do. It's our job. Culturally, we take a lot of pride in being caregivers. We say things like, Mama is never going to a nursing home. Good for those who can, but don't vilify someone who doesn't have the luxury of a job or a home or the money or caregivers to do that. So if they have to do it, then there are people who've been trained to do it. So just a few things to think about as you prepare.
Great. And I want to I'll come back to something specifically that you just mentioned on the tail end. But right before we do that, I want to make it known to those in the building, or folks are chiming in online. They're calling out the names of certain things, and some of the questions you already answered for some of the folks online concerning the service area. But for anyone who has a question in the building, and I sort of debated on how to do this because we're making it available for seniors especially. But I said I wanted you to come up to the microphone so that we can see and hear you. It'd be good for exercise for you to make it up to the mic. But for any questions you may have, feel free to make your way to the microphone. Once I see you there, I'll acknowledge you. But we did want to do it in a way that our online folks who are watching in real time and those who will watch the replay will be able to hear and understand your question. You mentioned nursing homes or assisted care living facilities. Some of us in this room are also familiar with rehab facilities. That is, after a person may have had a major health episode before they go home, if home is their next phase, they go to a rehab facility that prepares them for going home. We had one of the parishioners in our church who was receiving very fine care from one of our area hospitals. I mean, very fine care. And after being released from that hospital, was sent to a rehab facility. Now, while he was in the hospital, he didn't fall one time. But in that rehab facility, he was falling. I got word from his family that he had fallen more than one time. And I'm a little strange as a pastor. I believe in kind of being a little hands-on. So I went to the facility to meet with them to find out why in the world had he fallen. And they made a statement to me that day. I don't know if it's still true now, after they apologized for him falling. Then they became defensive and said, Pastor Thorpe, you do know that Florida is a right to fall state. Okay, good. Y'all are just as shocked as I was. And I was mortified that you're telling a person who's concerned about their loved one, specifically about a parishioner, that they have the right to fall in your facility, especially when they were coming out of a facility where falling was not an issue. So we had to do a whole lot of advocacy work, and we were able to get a lot of things done that I believe made a lot of things better in that process. But I had the time to do it. I had the desire to do it, that kind of thing. If you could touch on, and this may be perhaps outside of your purview, but for families who are genuinely concerned about the care and well-being of their loved one.
Yes.
They physically cannot care for them either for financial reasons or their own personal care needs, and it becomes a necessity to put them in a nursing home or an assisted care living facility. Are there resources to help guide them on advocating on behalf of their loved one, or knowing the do's and don'ts on how to communicate with the facility?
Absolutely. Two things, first and foremost, that I would recommend. Before you, just because the facility's been there for 30 years and you've been driving by it and grandma and auntie and 10 cousins went there, go on to the ACA website, Agency for Healthcare Administration, search that facility, dig a little bit deeper because they all change names every 90 days. And I don't mean any offense to anybody who works in that industry, but that industry, for liability purposes, for a whole lot of other reasons, do a lot of name and ownership changes. Search the ACA website so that you can see the rating of that facility and see if there are any complaints. Dig a little bit deeper on those facilities. We have skilled nursing facilities. We have independent living. We have assisted living facilities that are, and then, of course, there's home care. So search the ACA website first and foremost. If in the event you feel like there is more that needs to be done, there's the Florida Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, Florida Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and there are people who, on a voluntary basis, assist families and individuals who are in nursing facilities to advocate for their health. The third thing that I would say is that I think one of the things that we could serve to do better is more community. So in the same way, Pastor Thorpe, that you advocated for that individual, any of us that have a few extra moments, we can become a benefit to, what do our visitation programs really look like? And when we start seeing, 5 different people came last week to see, Mrs. Jones. And we didn't know when they were going to come. We didn't know. The quality of care will inch up a little bit. Churches right now are in a very, very interesting place. We should be doing the things that we used to do. And I know that sounds broad, maybe even a little old-fashioned, but so in the southern part of the territory that I cover, a lot of churches are being really useful. They're creating, with all the space that we typically have, they are doing things like offering respite care to families of people who are home caregivers, just so they can bring them there. And I don't mean, serious medical conditions, somebody who might need, adult briefs or any of those kind of things. I don't mean that level, but just somebody who may be dealing with early stage dementia and has to be, watched all the time. And then you could drop that person off at least one day a week, some volunteers staff that, and that person can run some errands or just clear their head. So I'm just throwing out some other things that we can do, but please do your research. Ask around. Back in the day, nursing homes had to pass the smell test, and if it didn't pass the smell test, we weren't going there, right? But I think it's deeper than that because, Fabuloso can cover up a lot of errors. And we've got to really be detailed to do our due diligence before. Now, I realize that, again, sometimes it's a financial situation. And we're not going all the way there tonight in our discussion, but there are things that you can do in making plans in order to qualify yourself for better care. That's why I recommend calling our SHINE program, taking advantage of, there's a Florida Senior Legal Helpline that can assist you with getting some things in order so that you will leave less worry on the people who have to care for you because you've taken a few steps. I know that's broad, but I'm trying to at least open up your channels of thinking around it.
Great. And we'll talk, and we're getting close to the end of it. We've got about another 20 minutes of our scheduled time to spend together. And there's a specific financial area that I'm going to touch on more than Pastor Jones is. Pastor Jones has some liability issues that kind of govern what he can and cannot say. I'm going to say a little more than I'm going to ask him to say but then I'm going to allow him to give you specifically agencies that you can contact to do certain things that I'm going to tell you about before we leave here tonight. Some things that our family has learned along the way. But before I get into that phase, and I shared this question with you in advance, that we were going to talk about things that we can do financially as we age to better position ourselves so that as we may need additional care. I wanted to make certain that we answered that question, because sometimes we just wait really late to do certain things. I don't know what's going to happen to me mentally in 2023 if I see another GoFundMe campaign for someone who did everything they wanted to do while they were living. And then they pass away, and then it becomes the burden of the family to try and make things presentable for them. I've left some specific instructions all the way down to what I want on the bottom of my casket. This the one he wanted. So nobody's having to stress and strain. I had to go the extra mile. He wanted it just like this. But aside from passing away, in preparing for the longevity of life and improving our quality of life, aside from things like retirement, we understand we should all be preparing for retirement, but are there any specific things that we need to be aware of from a financial perspective, from a planning perspective, that we may need to do now in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s in preparation for our 70s, 80s, 90s? In the years to come?
Sure. I think some of the things that you can look into, and I'm told it's not as readily available nor as affordable as it used to be, but long-term care insurance. And if you have it, you are extremely blessed. You are beyond blessed if you already have it. But if not, have the discussion. Have the discussion with insurance professionals about different types of policies that will assist with your care and not just be death benefits. Have those discussions again. I also think that the way we handle our resources, the assets that we might expect to have to pass along, remember, we're living longer. And so you have in your mind, so-and-so is going to go to so-and-so, but it may be a greater burden on your family for them to have to maintain your care while they're waiting to inherit something. And so there was 20 years of pain and suffering before. So think about how you might liquidate, reallocate some of your own assets. All right. So if you have, and again, being really careful about this, because I recognize that this is not something that, it really is. When we talk about family and property and inheritance, it just is a muddy area. We know that. But think about yourself and think about what it's going to take, because all of us don't have the luxury of a retirement that will carry us until we're 99 years old. So those are the types of things that I would suggest that you begin to look at. Be careful at how you think, well, hey, we own a farm out here. I could just give it to so-and-so and then I'll qualify for Medicare. That's not how that works. So you need to speak to someone before you make those decisions. If you can afford to seek legal help, find an attorney, not just anybody, but look for an attorney who belongs to the Association of Florida Elder Law Attorneys, AFELA. If they are not certified through AFELA, they may be bootlegging with respect to any attorney in the room or watching. They are not specialized and certified by the Florida Bar to do the things that pertain to aging. The Association of Florida Elder Law Attorneys. There are about 4, I think, here in Gainesville, lots in other surrounding areas, but they can help you with all of the things that now, you can say, well, gosh, I don't want to pay an elder law attorney $5,000. Cheap nursing home care, that's a month. Cheap nursing home care, that's a month. So you would rather pay that $5,000 and clear things up going forward than to leave yourself in a position, where look for an attorney, but not just any attorney, not the person, who bailed boo-boo out of jail, but look for a fellow, and I can joke like that. I'm a pastor, and that's what we do. But search for a specialist, all right? Association of Florida, and you can ask them, are you elder law certified? They're going to say yes, but then say, are you a member of the Association of Florida Elder Law Attorneys?
So, Pastor, what you're saying is that if a person has assets that they don't necessarily want to spend on their personal or private care, that there are legal ramifications in place that attorneys can help you with to protect your assets. So that, for example, if you've saved up, all of your retirement over a number of years, you don't want to see all of your retirement money just go right out of the window to your care. That there are things that can be done to help protect your assets so that you're able to hold on to them, so that your golden years are just that, golden and not aluminum. So that you can, I want you all to hear this part. He went there without me having to go there, because I was headed there, but he did it in a very tactful way. You can tell, this is a part of his calling and a part of his vocation. So let me put it where everybody can get it. If you have a retirement, if you have resources, this also applies to the face value of your insurance policies. All of these things factor into it. And God forbid, if you end up in a place where you're not able to care for yourself, your family is not necessarily in a position to provide around-the-clock care for you, instead of seeing all of your assets being spent to the tune of more than $5,000 per month just for a relatively inexpensive residential program, there are things that you can do to help protect your assets and still receive a high quality of care. It does require legal advice to get that done, and not just any legal advice, like the person who bailed Pookie or Ray Ray out of jail or got them off on those charges. Some very specific care. You mentioned that. They got it. We got it on tape. If you don't get anything else out of what we're sharing tonight, what we've just talked about, and this next thing that I want to deal with in the last 12 minutes that we have, I believe may be the most important. So know in advance what your options are. And I'll share this from personal experience. A lot of the things that you're going to need to know, simply by contacting governmental agencies, they're not going to tell you automatically. You need to know these things in advance. Often you will be told what you do not qualify for because of your income level or because of your assets. There are ways to mitigate both income and assets when you prepare in advance, get high quality information, and you can make right and righteous decisions. So don't miss that tonight. Hold on to that tonight. I've certainly seen it on both spectrums. I had a dear friend and mentor that in my early years of being trained in the vocation that I was in before I became a pastor, he had amassed what most of us would call a small fortune. And it did not last 5 years in caring for him. And what most of us would have called a small fortune was gone in just a matter of years. And he ended up under indigent care where he was relying totally on the government to care for him because he simply did not know, and his family was not aware of what could be done. You mentioned some things earlier that I want us to get as down to earth with as we can. Okay. And I'll let you decide whether or not you're comfortable in doing that. There were 3 ailments that you mentioned specifically. One was things or something like a heart attack or cardiovascular disease. You mentioned strokes. You mentioned dementia. Often when we hear about things like heart attack, stroke, dementia, we think about them and not about us. We think about it in the sense of that's something that happened to that person, but it could never happen to me, when the truth is quite different. And you touched on it when we very first began, but if you could kind of go down a little further, not only on the consequences of a bad diet, the consequences of inactivity, but if you can touch a little more specifically on what it physically does in our bodies, when our diet may be improper, when our exercise is not at the level that it should be, and things that we can do to make those things better so that we understand the science better. My former doctor told me for years, which I thought was bizarre, he said, you could stand to lose a little weight. I'm like, dude, right. I'm trying to hold on to all of it that I can get. But I learned over time that there was something more specific that he was driving at. He wouldn't just come out and say it. I ended up having to change doctors to get them to come out and actually say what it was that I needed to hear. But if I had known earlier, sure. I would have made some more drastic decisions. But there are just so many things that often we just don't know.
So I'll try to quickly touch. And I need to walk around with a disclaimer on me. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not an attorney. I discuss a lot of multidisciplinary, from a multidisciplinary way, I discuss the things that benefit caregivers. So let me quickly say that the way dementia works, the way Alzheimer's disease or anything that disturbs or disrupts cognitive function is because of the multi-thousands of brain cells that you have, they're all speaking to each other, just like wires, just like this building is wired. When they become blocked, just like we would have a heart blockage or any other blockage that would cause a heart attack or a stroke, they're called that's called plaques. Sometimes they also become tangled. All of those are results of things that we don't have the exact answers to, but we're beginning to drill down to find out that a lot of it are the same reasons we have heart attacks and we have strokes and all of those things. So a person, again, dementia is that big umbrella term for a lot of things, and almost everyone in here knows someone who's just not quite themselves. They're confused, they can't drive, they don't remember instructions, they can't cook, they may have lost their ability to walk, or a lot of other things that happen with that because, again, dementia is many conditions. But what we're finding, and there's a study now going on that if you take a statin drug, and some of you in here may take a statin drug because you have higher cholesterol, statin drugs, they're now experimenting with that because they believe that just all of the gunk that is in our body, from fatty foods, salty foods, and all the other things that we just have been doing routinely for all of our 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, we just think it's okay and I'm gonna be all right. Well, we find that your body physically may survive that, but then you have damaged some of those crucial neural connections, and they're not able, when the brain's not able to rewire itself in order to allow you to have the same level of cognitive function. And so heart disease is a precursor to dementia. Again, stroke, any excessive use of alcohol, any type of fatty diet, sedentary lifestyle. We're finding that those are some of the problems, but let's talk about some of the things you can do. I mentioned the Mediterranean diet, and I don't mean Mediterranean diet like this is something you're going to go and I'm going to be keto for 6 months and then I'm going back after I lose weight. It is a lifestyle change. You may do something like changing the type of oil you have in your house. Just stop buying corn oil, and all you're going to do from here on out is buy olive oil or avocado oil or grapeseed oil. Just simple changes that you can make to that. I'm not going to use butter. I'm going to use this. I'm not going to cook with this type of fatty, additive. I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut down on my salt. Pretty much, if you think it's something that your doctor would tell you to do, you probably need to do that. But also things like walking on a daily basis. Just get up and walk. Make it your just a habit to walk whenever you get an opportunity. Park further from the grocery store so you have to walk a little bit to get to it. You get a little exercise in. We're always, circling until that one parking space in front of Publix comes open. But wait, okay? Park a little further down and force yourself to have to walk that extra bit. Doing things like that. Here's some other things that you might not realize. If you want to delve into something that really builds your brain's capacity, learn a second language right now. Jump into that. Start writing with your non-dominant hand. You're building different neural connections. Take line dance. Line dance directly correlates to better brain health and its prevention because you're having to remember steps and you're also getting exercise. So it's more than just, so now, these dance groups that you see out there, there's more to it than just getting together and dancing. They're actually prolonging their life and increasing their brain health. Definitely lowering your fatty food intake, lowering your sugar intake. All of those things that we know destroy the body are destroying your quality of life long term. And so you definitely want to do those kinds of things. But, even picking up a hobby that is going to require you to do something. I know, don't get stuck on, doing word games and puzzles thinking, well, this is going to help me. Those are not really the types of things because you're using the same pathways that you've always used. Looking for ways to force your brain to do something that's never done opens you up to creating what's called neuroplasticity. I don't expect you to remember it, spell it, none of that. But essentially what happens is after a person has a stroke and they regain speech, it's not necessarily because those connections healed. It's because your brain just said, there's a workaround. And I'm going to teach you a new way to talk. And because the brain is that beautiful, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. So that's the some of the things that we can do. We've got to change. Again, we can't eat grandma and great-grandma's breakfast. My grandma used to pour bacon grease in the middle of her grits. Seriously. Some of y'all cringe at the thought of it. That's what she ate on a daily, right? I do not have to tell you all that she died of congestive heart failure and a stroke, right? So we can't do that and think we're going to we know better, so we're required to do better. Just so you know, all right? So I know that was a lot.
Pastor, that was perfect. That was perfect. In Jacksonville, we called it red eye gravy. Yeah. Red eye gravy in Jesus' name. This has been so rich, so rich. It's going to remain on our church's Facebook page. It's on my personal page. It is also on the church's YouTube channel. So you'll be able to go back, rewatch it, find those key points, the specific things, phone numbers, agencies that were mentioned so that you can apply all of this. I want to make this commitment as the pastor of this church. You talked about line dancing. You talked about learning a second language. There may have been a third one that you mentioned.
Writing with your non-dominant
Writing with your non-dominant hand. I thought about that. That's why I didn't remember it. I thought about it while he was saying it. I'm still working on doing good with the one I've been using for these last years. But writing with your non-dominant hand to better stimulate what's happening in this thing up here that we're going to need more and more as time progresses. So line dancing, writing with your non-dominant hand, learning a second language. Lord's willing, as a church, at a minimum, we're going to be working on all three of those things. So don't think it's strange when you hear that we're going to have line dancing down there at the church. Don't think the pastor has lost his mind. It's because I want you to not only live a long time, but to live a very healthy, happy life. This has been so rich. It has been so fruitful. Some of y'all been wanting to dance anyway. You come on out here to the church. You know, some of y'all old school. Say you know, you're on your way to hell because one of your feet moved too fast. But no, if we do it together in church, it's okay. It's all right if we do it together in church. So prepare for that. We look forward to tapping into as many resources as possible. Would you help me thank Pastor Jones for being such a blessing to us tonight? Any last thing you wanted to share?
Yes. www.agingresources.org. That's our website. www.agingresources.org. All right, I gave you 1-800-963-5337. That's our elder helpline. You can reach out to us, 1-800-96-ELDER. You can call that. It's I think an 8 to 5 number, 5 days a week. But the website, the elder helpline, it's the gateway. Our office is over on Tower Road. If you pop in, somebody's going to help you and talk you through whatever it is. But we're here to help. And I'm so grateful for what Faith Church has done. We need more faith partners, and we need more communities of faith to come alongside to help our aging community, to help all of us. I depend on what my community is going to be able to do to help me when I'm in need. So thank you so much for what you do, Pastor, and thank you, church.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. Look forward to seeing you this upcoming Sunday morning, 9:15, right here in the building or at home. Let's pray before we go. Lord, we're thankful for every good and perfect gift that you have provided. Thank you for the ability to learn and for the responsibility you have given us to care for these temples that represent your presence. Give us wisdom. Give us your supernatural knowledge. Help us that now that we know better, we can do better. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you have a wonderful night. We'll see you soon.